All right, chapter 14. A light bulb, a pencil sharpener, a coffee pot, and a sack of potatoes. Galileo was a great scientist, said Mrs. Drazil. He was born in Italy in 1564 and died in 1642. He was the first person to use a telescope to study the stars, and he also helped figure out the laws of gravity. Oh, I know about gravity, said Joe. Mrs. Jules pushed a computer out the window. It fell a lot faster than a pencil. I don't think so, said Mrs. Drazil. Galileo proved that all objects fall at the same speed. He conducted a very famous experiment. He dropped lots of different objects off the Leaning Tower of Pisa. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is in Italy. It was built in... Todd raised his hand. You're getting a little boring, he said. Oh, my goodness, am I? Asked Mrs. Drazil. Rondi, Leslie, Paul, and Calvin nodded their heads. I'm sorry, said Mrs. Drazil. She thought a moment. I know, she exclaimed. Let's do an experiment here. The children cheered. They loved experiments. Mrs. Drazil rubbed her hands together. Let's see. We will need a coffee pot, a pencil sharpener, a light bulb, and, she thought a moment, we need something heavy. Elephants are heavy, said Benjamin. Oh, there are no elephants in Wayside School, said Mrs. Drazil. Everyone laughed. How about a sack of potatoes? Asked Ron. I bet Miss Mush has one. Oh, go see, said Mrs. Drazil. There's a coffee pot down in the office, said Stephen. Go get it, said Mrs. Drazil. If I had a screwdriver, I could get the pencil sharpener off the wall, said Eric Fry. I've got a screwdriver, said Jenny. Can we use a fluorescent light bulb? Asked Phoebe. She looked up at the ceiling. I guess so, said Mrs. Drazil. How do I get it? Asked Phoebe. You're the scientist, said Mrs. Drazil. You figure it out. Phoebe put her chair on top of her desk and stood on it. She still couldn't reach the ceiling. Hey, Benjamin, let me have your chair. She put Benjamin's chair on top of hers, but she still wasn't tall enough. Calvin dumped the wastepaper basket onto the floor. Try this, he said. Phoebe turned the trash can upside down and put it on top of Benjamin's chair. Then she climbed on top, but she still couldn't quite reach. Leslie brought the class dictionary. Jenny and Dana donated their math books. Cherie grabbed Mrs. Drazil's old blue notebook. Put that down, yelled Mrs. Drazil. Right now! Cherie dropped the notebook. Mrs. Drazil's kindly old face had suddenly turned mean. Don't ever touch that again, Mrs. Drazil ordered. Cherie returned, trembling to her seat. Everyone was staring at Mrs. Drazil. She smiled sweetly. Go back to what you were doing, she said. Jason threw Phoebe his lunchbox. She set it on top of the books, then climbed on top. Standing on her tiptoes, she was able to pull the cover off the fluorescent light. She grabbed the light just as the pile collapsed beneath her. She fell to the ground, triumphantly holding the unbroken light bulb high above her head. Ron returned with a sack of potatoes for Miss Mush. Stephen returned with Mr. Kidswatter coffee pot. Eric Fry unscrewed the pencil sharpener from the wall, and Mrs. Drazil wrote coffee pot, sack of potatoes, pencil sharpener, and light bulb on the blackboard. We're going to drop all 4 objects out of the window at the same time, she said. How many people will think the coffee pot will hit the ground first? Is there coffee in it? Asked John. It's about half full, Stephen reported. 8 kids thought the coffee pot would hit the ground first. 16 thought the sack of potatoes would hit the ground first. 3 thought the light bulb would hit first. Only Terrence thought the pencil sharpener would hit first. Jason, Jenny, Joe, John, and Joy were judges. Mrs. Drazil sent them outside. Stephen held the coffee pot out one window. Phoebe held the light bulb out another. Eric Fry held the pencil sharpener out another. And Ron held out the sack of potatoes. Everyone else crowded around to watch. With everyone on the same side of the classroom, the school leaned a little bit, just like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. On your mark, get set, let go, said Mrs. Drazil. The objects fell through the air and smashed against the pavement. A short while later, the judges returned. Their clothes were splattered with coffee. Jenny had bits of potato in her hair. Was the pencil sharpener first? Asked Terence. It happened so fast, said Joe. They all hit about the same time. But the coffee pot made the coolest explosion, said Jason. I think the light bulb hit the ground last, said John. Well, that's possible, said Mrs. Drizzle. Gravity causes all objects to fall at the same rate, but air slows them down. That's what's called air resistance, and that's good. Otherwise, raindrops would kill us. Air resistance slows all things down a little bit, but it has a greater effect on very light objects, such as a piece of paper or a feather. And of course, the shape of the paper is important too. A crumpled up piece of paper will fall faster than, You're getting boring again, said Mac. Mrs. Drizzle stopped talking. Now we need a new pencil sharpener, said Leslie. Then Paul licked her ear. Why did Paul lick Leslie's ear? Do you remember? The school's guidance counselor hypnotized him to lick her ear every time she said pencil, or to think it was candy. That's funny, huh? He finally licked her ear. Crazy. I want you guys to Google and look up, when you have some time, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Pisa. It's very cool. It's a very real tower. It's really neat to look at, because if we were in class, I would pull it up for you right now. All right, that was chapter 14. Stay tuned for chapter 15. Bye.